What's going on, y'all? It's Anthony Milian, the host of Learn Something New Today, a podcast about education, entertainment, and the intersection of both, and pretty much whatever I want to talk about today. Uh, I have a really special guest, somebody who I've known for a little over a year now. We started following each other when there was a massive blackout in Puerto Rico, and we were putting out, you were putting out resources for Puerto Rico. I was talking about different places that were helping Puerto Ricans, and I think we kind of met that way. And over the years, we
Yeah.
became friends. He is a food blogger, a food content creator, a cook. He gets people to cook in his house. He does a lot of things. This man travels around the United States and gets really cool food. He does it with his family. He's garnered well over 300,000 followers across several different platforms. It's your boy, Mike. You probably know him by his voice. It's your boy, Mike. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No problem, man. No problem. How you doing?
Good, good.
Good,
Happy
good.
to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Bro, I got to
Yeah, yeah.
start off. I've been watching your journey for quite some time, and I really want to know where it started because I didn't know you were a foodie or a food guy. But watching your journey from like philanthropy, entrepreneurship, and intersecting it with food and things like that, how did this all start? Tell me.
So, I mean, I've been creating for almost 9 years now. This version is probably almost 5 years old at this point, right? And when I started creating real estate content because that's what I was doing at the time, told myself how to edit, put it all out myself. And then about a year in, I realized people really only care about real estate if that's what they do or they're actively involved in a real estate transaction. With the exception of like real estate porn, like this is what $6 million in Brooklyn looks like.
Right.
And then I pivoted to creating like leadership as motivational content, very much in like a Gary V kind of vein. Because at that point I was running a team of 10, so I would take the lessons I was teaching my agents and turn it into content. And eventually hired a full-time videographer to follow me around and do that whole daily blogging shit. And then got sick of it all and said, fuck social media. And this is 2019. And I took like a month off in like September. And then in October, I joined TikTok. And the first video I posted went viral. And it was just a repurposed Instagram story of like me poking fun at one of my agents who always talk shit about Queens and then eventually moved to Queens. Um, and food wasn't immediate. You know, food came soon on, but it really just was about like showing like being a lifelong New Yorker. There's not a lot of us left, right? Like there's not a people who were born and raised in New York and stay here, or spend the majority of their time here. Maybe they keep a couple of places, right? Um, and it was just telling that unique story that so I would go, like I had to eat anyway, so I would go to the places where I would eat and content, and the world ate it up, part of the pun. And I mean the rest is history. It's now it's a job that feeds the family. My wife runs the back end of the business. My son creates content with me. At 8 now, he's been doing brand work since he's almost 6. So like it's just creating an infrastructure that can support us, and who knows what this will expand into, but that's how we got to today.
Man, that is so cool, especially like you're a father, I'm a father as well, knowing that you get your son involved in it. Of course, obviously, I'm in a different space than you, a history space, where, having to teach my son about historic topics, I don't think he's ready for that yet. But as a parent, I'm really trying to incorporate how I can get him involved into this more. And watching you and your son, as I see your videos, watching you and your son navigate the journey, it really inspires me. Um,
Thank you.
as a father, as a parent, I gotta ask, you're a husband, you're a father. How do you balance the demands of being a partner, of being a parent, paying bills, with the demand of always having to be on the go? Because every time I see you, like you live in New York City, from what I know,
Mhm.
but you're not. a lot of the times in New York City, you're up in like Woodstock, you're in Asheville, you're in Asheville's North Carolina. I see you all over the place. Like, how do you balance all that?
So I got to thank my wife for all that. Like she does a lot of the logistics side, planning, calendaring. Like she runs my calendar and I just follow it. Um, so that's the dynamic that kind of works for us. Like I tend to be more of the extrovert. She tends to be more of the introvert. So we lean into that. It's not easy, in the least, uh, at all. We do try to. So as we've tried to kind of pivot into a little more travel content, we've really made an effort, concerted effort to do like one trip a month. So somewhere generally within a driving distance of New York City, because that's where a huge segment of my audience is, at least. And then, New Yorkers take vacations all the time. And it's not just about New Yorkers. Obviously, if I'm going to North Carolina, Virginia, or even upstate, like there's always a bunch of people that are interested in whatever that is. So it's just scheduling, honestly, and then realizing that this is the job, right? Like this is what you do. Like I before I did this, I worked for myself, so like I'm not used to always being on call or whatever it is, or like being like I haven't checked out at 5 ever.
Right.
So like to me, it's normal. But it's also it requires um, a lot of work, right? It's not easy, but it's like to complain seems like I don't know, just seems fucked up because it's like I realize how great a position like it is to be doing what we do.
It it really is. I was talking to another content creator. She's in a food space, Anela Malik, Feed the Malik, and she was telling me that she introduces herself as an influencer because she likes to see the people's response to it. We live in a culture where people really don't value influencing or content creation until they need it for their business. When you come across people, how do you introduce yourself? Like when
So for
people
a long while, I
how
would say content creator,
say
right?
content creator,
But what I realized is like I would say that, and people are like, okay, what is that,
right?
right? Whereas if I say influencer, people know immediately what that is, right? I don't necessarily like the terminology, but it's like if I walk into a restaurant and I'm like, hey, I'm an influencer here to shoot versus hey, I'm a content creator here to shoot, like the response you get is different. And it's not about being treated any differently. It's about like I'm there to work, right? Like so like at the end of the day, like, you know, what do we need to do? Um, but I just like to think of myself as like a storyteller. Like, we're essentially building a media company. And we create a bunch of different series where we do a bunch of different things and always are constantly trying new things. And essentially it's like I think of myself as a TV network.
Right.
Um, you know, do I say, oh yeah, I'm a TV network? No. It depends on the context and the conversation and the area. Sometimes it's like, social media agency work. Sometimes it's social media management. Sometimes it's influencer. It really kind of depends on the context.
Right.
Um,
Right.
because
So,
I think ultimately to be successful, you need to wear a bunch of different hats
right,
um, in this.
right, right. And I think one thing that, like you said, you have to wear a bunch of different hats, even if you don't want to, you have to. Because at the end of the day, if you're paying taxes, you're your own accountant. If you're buying healthcare,
Right.
you're your own health insurance broker. So, definitely be thinking if anybody's watching this and they're like, I want to get into content creation full time, be thinking about the hats that you're gonna have to wear. Now I really want to talk about something because you're a food content creator. Recently, a very famous food content creator went to Washington, D.C.
Oh man, don't get me started with him, please. Please. Homie played himself. Like you come to New York and you can't have a good experience. You go to DC and you can't have a good experience. No. Like I get it, your palate's different, and maybe you belong staying where you are, like on the other side of the country, where maybe like Applebee's is a highlight, so anything better than that is good. But
Not
like,
Apple.
fuck out of here. No, but like that's the majority of America, The
Right.
majority of America is Applebee's country, right? Like
Right. Right. Right.
where that's I don't want to say fine dining, but that's going out to eat,
That's going on.
right? So like so if that's your baseline and like you're creating stuff better than that, but when you can't find stuff in the DMV, which we were just in, it has insane food, and New York, you're playing yourself.
I wanted to ask because it seems like it's not necessarily like a food taste issue a lot of times, but it's like a quality, not a customer service issue. Do you find that, as a New Yorker, you have different standards for customer service?
I
But
have no expectations for customer service.
you don't have any expectations, right?
No.
Okay.
Like I'm a New Yorker, right? Like it is what it is. Like if you're nice, great. If you're not,
Not so-
I'm here for the food, right? Like the ambiance and all that. No, like good food wins. Like if you think about just life, like anything that's good is successful. You
right.
don't see good places going out of business. You see places that are or don't or like or just like or like they're checking off the box. Yeah, all that. Like I'm gonna open a new boba spot. Okay, great. Like what's any different than the 18 other boba spots that are out there?
Right. Right.
So I don't give a fuck. Like when people complain about that shit, I'm like, yo. I was just on a podcast the other day and they were talking about how when you go into Jamaican restaurants, the ruder they are, the better the food generally is. And it's true.
I gotta talk about that because there was a Jamaican restaurant here, down the street from my house, and that rude, like that only works in certain places because the
Mm-hmm,
Jamaican restaurant is not there anymore. It's shut down because
mm-hmm.
everybody was complaining. And of course, I live in a majority white
Right.
areas. My area is like 97% white. And they loved the Jamaican food, but they were like, everybody in there is so rude to us. And these were Jamaicans that, like, I guess they came from New York and then came down here. And that only works with certain places. It doesn't work.
Maybe.
This is the third Jamaican
Maybe.
that has shut down in this area. And the main complaint is that people are rude. Now, I wanted to segue with that and ask you, as a food content creator, when you walk into a place and you're like, I'm here to shoot, I'm a content creator, one, do they know ahead of time? And two, how do the owners or like the people working there react towards you when they see you come in?
So I would say 50% of the time they have no idea that I'm gonna be there. So it's generally like hey, can you contact whoever, like this is who we spoke to, so on and so forth. Like the person at the front end is often not aware, but it's a basic conversation and you've had it enough of times, and then they get on the phone and call or DM or text or whoever it is, and then it's fine. Then people are like happy, to have you and serve you. I don't think we ever honestly get any better treatment as a byproduct of it. I mean, some people may come over that watch the content or like, hey, I'm a fan, and that's always cool. Tops, take a picture, have a conversation 100% of the time. But an owner's there, they're generally thankful. They're like, hey, thanks for coming, blah, blah, blah. But I don't feel like there's any like on a pedestal kind of shit. Like I think like the experience we have is not much different than any other person.
Did you ever see the episode of South Park where everybody becomes a Yelp food reviewer? And the
Oh
people come into
shit.
the restaurant and they're like, hold on,
Yeah.
I need a free meal. I'm a Yelp food reviewer. And the guy, the owner is like, fuck you.
Listen, I mean that energy exists in this world, right? Like and what I've realized is like I'm not gonna sell to people that don't want to be sold. Right?
Right,
Like if you feel what you feel, that's great. Good for you. More power to you. Like I wish you the best, but it's probably not gonna go incredibly well.
right, right, right,
But it's the same thing with like sticking your head in the ground and expecting shit not to change.
right,
You either move with the world in the way that it is, or you get left behind. Right? Like if you're still putting print ads in newspaper, you might as well just take your money and put it in the toilet.
right.
So it's like at no point in the history of business has there been more free marketing than there is today.
Right.
So like, I don't know. I'm of the side that like there's enough money out there for everybody,
Everybody.
and you were paying either you paid a PR agency thousands of dollars a month when you opened because you wanted to get an article in ABC Press or whatever, the New York Times or something, something, something. I don't think that translates into actual dollars, but you
Mm.
spent that money because you thought there was value in that. So
Right.
like, honestly, there's enough efficiency, at least in this market and in the surrounding markets, that like if somebody's not interested, I'm just like moving on to the next one.
What's the next one? So let me ask, what is your approach to finding restaurants and not even just because you do food trucks, you do it all. So what is your approach to finding new places to eat and like when you see these like how do you know what's going to be something you approach or something that you're just like, maybe that can wait.
So once again, it's my wife.
What?
It's like 95% of it's my wife.
5% of it.
I would say 5% of it may be like shit that I just see in scrolling that I'm like, oh wow, like I haven't seen this and this looks good, or something that may come in through like a DM or whatever the case may be of like, hey, we're opening this or so on and so forth. But how do you know? I think of it like this, right? Like anybody can open any kind of restaurant in any ethnicity, right? And if you're making the same things that everybody else makes, there's nothing special about you. Now,
Right.
your food may be better, and that maybe would separate you. But if you don't have something that's somehow different or there's not a fusion of culture that exists, it's going to be hard for you to go viral,
Right.
right? Unless you significantly storytell in the way in which people are paying attention. So like unless you're incredibly funny or direct or it's going to be very hard. But when you have something that's a combination of cultures or things you haven't seen, like a beef patty with mac and cheese inside of it, or a chopped cheese raviolo, or
Wait a minute. Is that a real thing?
mm-hmm,
Chopped cheese ravi and you of course you had that in New York.
raviolo. Yeah, 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 yeah.
So
So
one
and it's owned.
a raviolo is one big ravioli.
Yeah, it's about this size, and it's owned by a Dominican dude,
No, I
right?
mean,
That's the beautiful shit in New York, right? Like,
yeah,
is
yeah.
it does you could be anything, right?
Right, right.
So, um,
For those who don't
yeah,
know, for those who are listening to this on the podcast on Spotify, a raviolo is one giant ravioli. It's stuffed with a bunch of stuff. In this case, it's stuffed with chopped cheese ingredients, which is like ground beef, onion, things like that. So,
lettuce, tomato, yeah,
oh, it
yeah.
has lettuce and tomato in it too.
It's all chopped into when the process is before it's stuffed.
I'm
So, like,
intrigued.
if you go,
Is
yeah,
it
if you go to
soggy?
my, if you no, it's delicious. If you go to my social, you'll see like and go back. They're open maybe 6 months now. Go back about 6 months. You'll see there's a bunch of videos I did there, and there's one where he actually shows me how he makes it. Um,
Hey,
you know,
gotta check
but
that.
those intersections of culture are what wins and what creates those opportunities more than just like, look at this piece of sushi,
Right.
right? Like, there's got to be something else to it more than just what it is.
Wow. Yeah, I got it.
Or
Next time I come
or
to New
it's
York.
dope storytelling, right? Like, or it's like you have an incredible story to get to this point, but then the story is the differentiating factor, right?
You know who's a really dope storyteller? Rob Martinez, man. I've been trying to get him on this podcast, man. He DM'd me yesterday. He was like, "It's probably not going to be this year." He's doing a lot, but that guy, I mean, watching him grow his platform. Same with you, man. Watching you grow your platform is it's amazing. Watching everybody get better. Um, but I wanted to ask, what is your favorite aspect outside of the cultural aspects? What is your favorite aspects of being a traveler and a food content creator? Of course, the money's good, but what would you say is like your favorite aspect to all of this?
I mean, I get paid to eat and travel. Like, I don't know how it gets any better than that, right? Like, that's like if you ask people what they want to do, like this is incredible. Like that I get to do this. I get to do it with my family. I get to do it by myself. I get to do it with my son. You know, Um, and and I get to try the best of what things are wherever it is, and I get to meet incredible people in the process that have opened my eyes up to a whole bunch of different avenues, ideas of things that I would have never thought 5 years ago when I made that first video on TikTok. Like I would have never realized that, like, because at that point I had been creating for like 3.5, almost 4 years, right? So it's like, and didn't make a penny, didn't like it. It was just like you keep trying and trying and trying, and but that's anything. You put in enough of work, you'll be successful.
100% correct. I do have a little personal beef with you.
Okay, go ahead.
A couple years back, you went to a place in Sheepshead Bay, which for
Mm-hmm.
those who don't know, I grew up in Sheepshead Bay. It was a bagel place called Bagel Boy,
Oh yeah, it
right?
was bad.
I grew up on Bagel Boy, and you said that their bagels were ass. Now, as somebody,
Listen, next time you're back in New York,
Mhm.
right? Here's what we'll do. We'll go to Bagel Boy, and then I'll take you to something that's significantly better. And then you tell me that shit ain't ass. And
Listen,
maybe it was a bad day.
this is
Maybe it
probably a
is,
bad
but
day.
like I was like, because Brooklyn was going hard. Oh, you got to check this out. You got to check this out. So I went,
Yeah,
and But what I found that's interesting is there's a lot of people who love the place in the neighborhood that they grew up on, and a lot of it stems from not having experienced a lot in that same niche elsewhere. So they think what they grew up on is the best. And I see it happen not just in bagels. There's pizza in certain neighborhoods that are like people like, oh, and I'm like, no,
yeah, like
absolutely
Spumoni
not.
Gardens. I didn't like that pizza.
Yeah. I think they're good. I don't like New Park, right? Like, and
Really?
people love that. Yeah, I think it's like elevated dollar pizza.
Wow.
Um, yeah, it's floppy as fuck, right? The sauce and cheese are just like mid-tier ingredients. Like I worked in a pizzeria from 12 to 18. So like, nah, I'm good. But like there's people that love that. And
Of course.
so I hear you. I'm gonna stand by my thinking Bagel Brothers is ass. And we could beef on it. I'm cool with that. But next time you're here, we'll have bagels. We'll do bagel
We'll
day.
have bagels. We got to do it, man.
I'm with it. I'm
Um,
with it.
I wanted to ask this, okay? So, a famous, about a year ago, a famous influencer, the same one that went to DC, went to New York, and he tried a chopped cheese, salmon chopped cheese. If you were to take somebody in New York to the most quintessential New York spots, the top five, top three, where would you take them and why? You could go borough by borough, you could go neighborhood by neighborhood. It's up to you.
So like I think I I think the beauty in New York
Mhm.
is there probably is not another metropolitan market on earth that is as diverse as New York is.
Agree.
So the things that exist here just don't exist in other places, right? Like where you are, you may have one, two Indian restaurants, for
Right.
example.
Right.
Here we have whole neighborhoods that have 500 or 1,000 Indian restaurants just in that neighborhood.
Right.
So it's hard. So I think to like the best of the best. So there's a bunch of places that I used to give grades on places that gave perfect tens to. So I would take people to the perfect tens. There are things that didn't get a perfect 10 that absolutely quintessentially are just as good. But the Fire Pizza, Brooklyn Bagels, Fortunato's Bakery, Kingston Tropical Bakery for beef patties and cocoa breads, Trin City for Trinidadian food.
Trin City, man, they got the best bacon chana. They got the best. I mean, bro, I love it.
Insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. King of Falafel and Shawarma. They're the best falafel I've ever had. So why? Because that's just literally the best of the best. So like you're gonna come here. Now, mind you, none of that is in Manhattan.
Right.
Taverna Kiklades for Greek food, right? So like when people are like, oh, where do I go? What do I do? Well, the first thing you do is you leave Manhattan. Like you spend your day in Manhattan, you do your touristy shit. Okay, you wanted to come and take the picture. Okay, good, cool. But like when that famous food creator reviewed pizza places and all three of them were in Manhattan,
That was a problem.
like New York checked them real quick. And I think that's what kind of upset him
Right.
is that like he wasn't used to that like yo, like you need to put more effort into what you're doing.
Right.
Period. Like that's it. Like you have this size audience, you have this following. There needs to be more effort put in, But like there's an ass for every seat.
Right. Right.
So there's people that like each and everything, and you know
You're the
there's
third
enough.
creator that said he needs to put more effort into the things that he's doing. Because it seems like at this point it's like no research, just like somebody DMs you, go to this place, and he goes and he's like, oh, this food sucks. And
Yeah,
everybody's like, why the hell did you go there? That has nothing to do with where we live. But another thing is like, if you're gonna eat in New York and you want to stay in Manhattan, go uptown, go to Washington Heights, go to
I
Inwood.
agree with that.
Yeah, go past, like go to Harlem. That's just as a New Yorker, I just feel like certain areas of Manhattan are known for more of their fiscal, financial, or like fashion culture, and some are
Right,
known for their ethnic food culture. And
totally.
never the two shall meet sometimes. But
Now,
I,
don't get me wrong. There is great food in Manhattan.
right,
Great food. But you want to talk about the best of the best?
yeah,
It's not in Manhattan.
not Manhattan. No, no, it's not in Manhattan. Um, so I wanted to also talk about you about a year ago or 2 years ago at this point, you put the macaroni and cheese beef patty and cocoa bread on the map.
We
Was
helped.
you put it on the map? I don't know how. Like, explain that process to me because we went to the spot. I believe it was 2023. We had gone to the spot, or was it 2022? I can't remember. But we went in 2020. Whenever we went, and you were like a celebrity there. They were like, "Yo, it's Mikey. It's Mikey." Tell me about that.
So I went. You're talking about Dat's Deli,
Yes.
right? And they had a location in Hollis, which for those of you who don't know is like the depths of Queens. It's the hood. And opened a deli and had like typically the plate food of like their Guyanese flavors and taste and so on and so forth. But then they made this beef patty with mac and cheese in it. They hadn't gotten to the oxtail yet the first time I was there, right? It was just the mac and cheese inside of a beef patty inside of butter flaps, which I thought was cocoa bread at the time, but butter flap is like a more Guyanese version of that, right? And once again, like we were talking about earlier, like that's just different. Like I love beef patties to start with, right? So like when it's something that I've never seen before, like instantaneous, and I took the bite and it was like, wow. I knew immediately,
Right.
immediately. So like I started that video saying, like, come before there's a line that before this goes viral and there's a line down the block, right? And within 3 months, there was a line down the block.
When I,
I also,
when I
hmm?
went there with you, there was a line around the corner.
Yeah. So like I also spend time with the owner, and I try to provide extra value time I go somewhere. So like I'll try to give some marketing advice or some suggestions, and just from how you can better have a presence on social media, right? And Josh, the owner, ate it all up and like literally did everything, and it works. And it's a multi-tiered strategy, and a lot of that and watching that blown up is like what we in turn turns into like offerings we have businesses to run their social and just using that same strategy because it works, right? Like, you know, the reality is we don't watch TV anymore. We watch people on apps on our phone.
That's true.
And the app that we watch them on is dependent on us, right? Because this person that's watching on Instagram is different than the person that's watching on TikTok, is different than the person that's watching on YouTube Shorts, is different than the person that's watching on Snapchat, is different than the person that's watching on Facebook. But they're all people consuming vertical video in some platform somewhere. Mm-hmm. So we're just now the TV show. That's all it really is. And when you see it, it's easy to it's easy to identify after you've seen it a couple times, right?
100%.
Like when you see something that's like, ooh, you know,
Right. Right.
and how do you create the ooh? Well, you need to try different things.
Different
You
things.
make a chopped cheese raviolo, you do a bunch of shit.
I might book me a trip to New York soon, man. I gotta try
No, for real. Let's go. It's right here in Bushwick.
so let's say I'm somebody and I'm like, man, I really want to be a food content creator. I don't know where to start, and I just happen to listen to this podcast. What is your advice to somebody who's like, I want to be a food content?
So I think this applies to anybody, not just a food content creator, right? Like, just show people what you're currently doing. Like, go out there. Don't think about like I got to create content. Don't think about like I got to make this video. Like, you're going to eat. Okay, video what you're eating, right? Knowing very well that the first 100 pieces of whatever you create is going to be garbage, right? Like, and that's just barely scratching the surface of putting in the work, right? Like, I'm not saying you're not going to have a hit in that period of time or whatever it may be, and that's great. But just know that it's not one happening overnight. Like, it took me 5+ years to make any money. It took 7 years before this became a full-time thing, right? Where I was able to walk away from real estate. So, like, 7 years of work, I must have put out thousands of videos in that period of time to get to a point to be able to be like, this is what I do, right? And some people definitely, like yourself, have it a lot quicker and sooner because of how short form is escalating things, and and that's beautiful. But it's work, right? So just get out there and continue to tell your story. Like, we're at a point where authenticity is more valuable than anything else in the world. So the most authentic thing you have is being you.
True.
Nobody else can be you but you, right? So, like, go out there and tell your story as you like it. Because if you like it, there's enough of other people like it, right? So that goes back to what we were talking about earlier with Keith, right? Like, there's an ask for every seat. And some people like multiple seats, but you want to find the people that are most similar, and they'll find you because they're attracted to what it is that you put out into the world.
That's very true. And thank you, Mike, for coming on the podcast. It's your boy, Mike Schultz in the house.
Thank you for having me
so much. And by the way, where can people find you? Let's drop the socials. Tell us
where
we can find you.
You can find me on pretty much every social network at It's Your Boy Mike Official. ITSYABOYMIKE Official.
It's your boy Mike. Thanks for coming on again, man. Take care.
Thank you. Be well.
Learn Something New Today is a podcast by yours truly, Anthony Modesto Milian, and we really do intersect entertainment with education and make sure that everyone has the best experience possible. If you like my work, if you like the work here, you can always buy merch at lsntoday.com, or you could follow me on any of the social media platforms at Def Not Ant, DEFFNOTANT. Add an extra T in for TikTok. If you like the work, give us 5 stars on whatever listening platform you're on. It will help us reach more people. Thank you again for listening. Have a wonderful day and take care of yourselves and each other.